For our density lab, we measured the dimensions of rectangular prisms or boxes of wood. This is our home experiment. At school we used aluminum, but can't be at school right now. And we measured that using a ruler. And then we also measured the mass using a kitchen scale. I'm just going to run through the procedure to make sure to remind people about how we did this. So we took the ruler and we first off measured the length of this thing. And got this zeroed on 0 here. Make sure it fits there. And then look over here. Looks to me like it's at 16.1. 16.2 centimeters is the first piece of data we gathered here, and take a pen to write that down. So this is we'll call it the length, 16.2 centimeters, and then we measured the width, and I got here about 6.8 centimeters, 0.8 centimeters. And we have the other dimension here. We'll call that the height. And it doesn't really matter what you call it, but just make sure you measure the 3 dimensions. And here we got 4.4 centimeters. Call that the height. 4.4 centimeters. And the last thing we're going to measure is the mass. For that, we're going to use our scale. We're going to make sure the mode here is in grams. And we're going to make sure that it's actually tared correctly. Let me explain that. Sometimes when you set this thing up, you have a reading like not exactly 0, and you're like, what the freak is going on? Anyway, then you can 0 it or hit the tare button. This is helpful for making a cake, for example. If you have a bowl on here, you want to make sure the bowl is not part of your flour mass measurement. Then you hit the tare button, and then you will only measure the mass of the flour. So in this case, it's set to 0 before we put the block on there. And now we put the block on there. And we have a mass of 206 grams. We can write that down. Mass equals 206 grams. And that's just showing how to do this. Now at home, you did the same thing with a slight difference in that you used Jenga blocks. And you specifically used one Jenga block, was one experiment. Okay? And then you use 2 Jenga blocks next to each other, so kind of making it be like a bigger one. Okay? And then 4 Jenga blocks, you get the idea. Not drawing the rest of that. And then 6 Jenga blocks. And in each case, you measured the length, the width, and the height, just like we did for this block. And that information went into the data table. Okay? And then out of these 3 numbers, you can calculate the volume by multiplying the length times the width times the height. Okay? And that also goes in the table. And then you're ready to plot your data on your graph, and specifically the volume, this number right here, that goes on what we call the x-axis, and the mass that goes on what we call the y-axis or the vertical axis. Not really x, volume, but that goes on the horizontal, and m goes on the vertical axis. Okay? If you have any questions, let me know.